Hey guys, it's Kayla.
And I'm Mark Allen.
And this is our channel. Here we talk about all things Disney as well as how to plan your Walt Disney World vacation. And today we are talking about why it is important to have an emergency fund when you go on a Disney vacation.
So if that interests you, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned.
Today we are starting a brand new series. We are going to start talking about debt-free Disney. So we are going to give you all of our favorite tips and tricks on how to stay on budget and not go into debt when you go on your Disney vacations.
And today we are talking all about why an emergency fund is so important when it comes to any sort of Disney trip.
So first of all, what is an emergency fund? This is a special allotted amount of money that you have set aside that's not currently budgeted for anything else. So this isn't your food money, it's not your souvenir money, it's not your hotel money. It is strictly set aside for emergencies. Emergencies are if you have like a medical emergency, heaven forbid, say you have any sort of weird flight delays that maybe you have to extend your trip or leave early, that you would need to buy like plane tickets or things like that. Kind of anything that would be very unexpected that you need to have just a little extra money prepared and set aside that you wouldn't necessarily need normally.
So why exactly is an emergency fund important in your Disney trip? Well, first of all, kind of like what Kayla said, you unfortunately just never know what will happen. So like what Kayla mentioned earlier, if something comes up, if you have to extend your stay, if someone gets hurt, anything like that, you just never know. The saying goes that, grandma always told you to save for a rainy day.
That's exactly what this is.
Yeah, and it's going to rain. It's not a matter of if it's going to rain, it's a matter of when it's going to rain. And the nice thing about this emergency fund is that it can be included within your Disney budget, and you can save for that amount with that if you would like. Or what we do is we just already have a normal emergency fund from day-to-day life. And so if we needed to dip into that, if something happened on a trip, we have that there.
We almost have two emergency funds because we have our normal day-to-day life emergency fund, but we also tend to have at least a few extra $100 for our emergency fund for things like if we happen to go a little over budget on food or whatever, and we're at the end of our trip and we're like, oh, oops. It's kind of just helps us to have that buffer to know that like we're still gonna be okay. This also really helps alleviate a lot of stress when it comes to Disney vacations. One thing that a lot of people do stress about is their budget and going too crazy overboard on their finances. You worked really, really hard to go on this vacation, and hopefully you are able to pay cash for this vacation. That being the case, though, you need to be prepared. Nothing is more stressful than getting halfway through your trip and realizing you're out of money and you have nothing to back up with and you don't have a credit card and that is so stressful. And so this emergency fund is really to help put your mind at ease and allow you to relax on your vacation. I mean, that is the whole purpose of it, right?
So not only is an emergency fund important during your trip, but it's also actually important before and after your trip. So before your trip, it actually helps you if something were to happen before your trip. It helps you so that you don't have to dip into your savings for your trip in that emergency.
Now, during your trip, we kind of mentioned a few of these already, but the biggest thing is really to make sure, like, in case you accidentally overspend. So you either overspend on souvenirs or you overspend on food or you need ponchos or any of the above things, you at least know you have that little extra buffer of money that it's okay to spend. You can deem what is an emergency though. That is up to each individual. For us, luckily we have enough of an emergency fund that it's great for going over budget just a little bit, but it's also for those like emergencies too.
Kind of at the end of the day, Disney is really, really good with their marketing And more than likely, you're probably going to go over budget in some area, whether that be food or souvenirs. Those are the two easiest places to go over budget when it comes to any Disney trip. And so it's good to just have that little cushion instead of coming home and going,
what have I done? And of course, again, like we mentioned earlier, it is really important to have these for those medical emergency, weather emergencies. This has happened to people before where they get caught in a hurricane and they can't leave until a day later. Well, you need a hotel night to stay and you may have to do some payment stuff with your flights or however you're planning on getting home. So it is really important for during your trip to have that money tucked away. Heaven forbid that you hopefully you don't have to use it, but at least you know it's there.
Now, after your trip, after you've returned home, you've obviously just spent a lot of money. Now, like we said earlier, hopefully you're paying cash, but we understand that not all people have the capability to be able to do that. And so you've probably just spent a bunch of money on your credit card and you're wondering, oh my gosh, this is a lot of money that we just spent. And what happens if any of those above things happen? Say, for example, if a health emergency comes up or your water heater goes out or a car breaks down, it takes all of that stress away if something like that happens.
You won't have this looming bill from your trip hanging over your head while you're also trying to take care of a serious situation. You know that money is there and it's ready to go, so okay, I can take care of this Disney thing later. I have the money now that I can take care of what I need to. Okay, so you're probably wanting to know, what is a good amount for an emergency fund? Now, this honestly is kind of a hard question to answer because it really depends on you and your family. A great place to start, Dave Ramsey recommends saving $1,000 for your emergency fund. He has his baby step system, and this is baby step number 1, is to get that $1,000 emergency fund. That is going to be enough that it will cover most emergencies. Obviously, there will be things that come up in your life that may be a bigger thing, but for the purpose of what we're talking about today, that's a really good place to start. You can choose for it to be a larger number than that or less if you can't quite afford that $1,000, and that's okay. Really what this is, it's just that little bit of money to help bring you peace of mind.
Now, that amount may sound really daunting to you, and so we also want to give you guys some tips on how you can get that $1,000 and get it quickly, because the whole point of it is that you do want to get it quickly because you never know when something might happen. So some tips on how to get your $1,000 is to sell some things. Maybe go through your house, see what items you can sell. We've done that several times, and you guys will be so surprised on what people will buy.
My gosh. So even if you think that it's junk and that no one will want to buy it, you should probably post it anyways because you never know.
Another tip on how you can easily get $1,000 or whatever amount you deem is appropriate is to maybe stop eating out for a month. You might have to make some of those calls. It's gonna be tough, but trust us, in the end, it's going to be so worth it.
And this is great for 2 reasons. 1, you are gonna save a ton of money for sure. But 2, it's also gonna make the food at Disney taste 1,000 times better because you will have only been eating at home. Unless you got a really great cook in your house. We don't. And our last great tip is to do a no-buy month. So what this means is that obviously you do need to spend money on essentials, food, your bills, things like that. But don't go on like a clothing shopping spree or eating out every single day or buying things for your house or just like any unnecessary purchases.
Amazon, we see you. So easy.
That's also dangerous. But you'd be surprised on all of the little things that you spend money on a day-to-day basis. And that can really make a big dent in getting to that $1,000 really fast.
Now, those are all great tips, but honestly, the biggest tip that we can give you is to start and keep a budget. Maybe you've already started one and you've just not kept track of it or anything like that. Budgets are not to really, they're not controlling. They are a guide rail to really give you permission to spend your money. So you can tell your money where to go in that budget. It's not to really confine you and constrict you on, this just feels like I can't spend my money. No, I mean, at the end of the day, it's your money and you get to say what your money goes to.
Because really, if you think about it, when you have a budget and you have money allotted towards a certain thing, it gives you permission to spend that money on that certain thing. So say you have like, and this works for both Disney and for at Life. So say for your Disney trip, you have $200 budgeted for souvenirs. Guess what? You're allowed to spend that $200 on souvenirs, whatever you want, because you've budgeted for it. Whereas if you just have a big generalized, like, this is how much money we have, and you're trying to figure out and keep track, and it gets really confusing and really stressful. So once you have your emergency fund done and ready to go, you need to make sure that you have your money in a easily accessible, safe place. So for us, that is a savings account. We just have a separate savings account that's called emergency fund. And what's nice about that is we know that anytime we need to take money out, we can, but we also know that it's not in our normal spending money, so we aren't going to accidentally spend that on whatever. With this, you do really need to be careful. Don't put it in something like a CD or something that's really hard to get the money out of, because it honestly, when that emergency arises, you're not going to be able to get to that money quickly. So that's where it's really important to have that money easily accessible.
Our last tip, once you have that emergency fund saved, is that you have to use it for emergencies.
It isn't your freebie money. It isn't your, I need these shoes because whatever. This money is for emergencies. And it does take a little bit of willpower to make sure you stick to that. A lot of people will have a credit card for emergencies, and it's their just in case card. Well, I'm not gonna cut up my credit card because it's just in case. Well, guess what? 9 times out of 10, you're going to spend that money because it's sitting there and you have it, and things that aren't really an emergency, you're gonna make excuses. So you need to really have a clear, defined set of, this is what an emergency is. This is what we are allowed to spend this money on, and stick to it.
If you are married or in a relationship, we really encourage you to define an emergency with your spouse or significant other. You have to come to agreement on that. For example, if I thought an emergency was XYZ and Kayla thought something different, and that something came up in my mind,
instead of bringing you peace, it's actually going to bring more anxiety and more arguing, which is not the purpose of the emergency fund. All right, well, that is pretty much it as far as an emergency fund. If you guys have any questions, make sure you leave those down in the comments below. We will try to answer those to the best of our ability. If you enjoyed this video and it was helpful to you, make sure you give us a big thumbs up. And of course, subscribe, because we have a lot more videos in this series coming out. We're gonna talk a lot more about debt-free Disney, and we're really excited to launch this. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. But other than that, that's all we have for you guys today.
Now
go create your ever after.